My purchase of the house last summer felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. The city, with its relentless noise and suffocating crowds, had become a cage. This place, nestled on the edge of a quiet wooded neighborhood, promised freedom. 4 bedrooms meant space to breathe, a big kitchen beckoned with visions of culinary experiments, and the wraparound porch called for lazy afternoons with a book and a cold drink. The yard was the perfect size for Duke, my loyal German shepherd, to romp around, and I envisioned myself grilling up a storm while swaying gently in a hammock. An idyllic picture I've sadly barely lived up to. The neighbors, from what I gleaned during the closing process, seemed friendly enough, offering polite smiles and waves, but generally keeping to themselves, a characteristic I deeply valued. I craved anonymity, a sense of isolation after years of being crammed into overcrowded apartments. The moving truck lumbered up the driveway, laden with the sum total of my life. And as I began to unpack, a sense of contentment settled over me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was a clean slate, a chance to redefine myself away from the pressures and expectations of city life. However, this bubble of serenity was soon to be pierced. It wasn't even a full day before she arrived. I was halfway through wrestling a particularly stubborn futon frame out of a box when I heard a crisp, assertive voice calling out from the porch. I straightened up, wiping sweat from my brow, and saw her standing there. A woman radiating an aura of disapproval and entitlement. She clutched a clipboard like a weapon, and her eyes, magnified by oversized glasses, scanned me with a judgmental intensity that made me instantly uncomfortable. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp and laced with thinly veiled disdain. "Do you have clearance from the subdivision committee to be residing here?" The question was delivered with the air of an inquisitor demanding answers from a heretic. I blinked, taken aback by her rudeness. "Clearance?" I repeated, dumbfounded. "I bought the house. I have the deed." She sniffed, unimpressed. "That doesn't necessarily grant you automatic approval. We have standards in this community. Noise ordinances, landscaping regulations, general decorum." She peered past me into the open doorway. "Are you planning on hosting loud parties? We value the tranquility of this neighborhood." Even the term tranquility was uttered with such force that it threatened to shatter the very peace she claimed to uphold. This was just the beginning of a descent into madness. I tried to politely explain that I was simply moving in, that I wasn't planning on throwing any raves, and that I was a generally quiet and respectful person. I even attempted a joke about my only wild parties involving Duke chasing squirrels, but my efforts at de-escalation were met with a stony silence. She scribbled something on her clipboard, her lips pursed in disapproval. "And that urban disturbance," she gestured towards the still unloading moving truck with a visible grimace, "needs to be removed promptly. We have parking restrictions, you know." I bit back a sarcastic retort about the truck being far less disturbing than her attitude. I brushed off the encounter, chalking it up to her being one of those overly involved HOA types. Every neighborhood has one, right? I was wrong. So very wrong. It soon became apparent that this woman, whom I now knew to be named Karen, of course, was not affiliated with any official organization or committee. She was simply obsessed. My initial annoyance quickly morphed into genuine unease. Karen began appearing at my house every other day, sometimes multiple times a day. She'd invent flimsy excuses, asking to see the inside to ensure proper ventilation, inquiring about any renovations I was planning to undertake, as if I needed her permission, and scrutinizing every aspect of my property with a hawk-like intensity. One afternoon, I caught her lurking in my backyard, snapping pictures of my AC unit with her phone. When I confronted her, she claimed she was assessing potential noise pollution. The absurdity of it all would have been laughable if it wasn't so unsettling. Her visits grew increasingly bold and intrusive. She started leaving handwritten notes on my door, filled with passive-aggressive suggestions about my lawn maintenance and unsolicited advice on how to integrate into the community. One note even included a poorly drawn sketch of what she considered to be an acceptable mailbox design. I considered installing security cameras, but I didn't want to create an atmosphere of paranoia. I tried to ignore her, to avoid eye contact, to pretend I wasn't home when she came calling. But like a persistent mosquito, she always found a way to get under my skin. The situation was escalating, and I feared it would result in a violent ending. The day it all went completely off the rails started like any other Monday. I logged into my computer, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and prepared to face another week of spreadsheets and conference calls. Working from home had its perks. No commute, comfortable clothes, unlimited access to snacks, but it also meant a constant struggle to maintain boundaries between my professional and personal life. Was 5 minutes into a crucial Zoom meeting with my marketing team when I heard a strange sound coming from the front door. It wasn't a knock nor a ring, but a distinct jangling of keys. Alarm bells went off in my head. I glanced at the security camera feed on my phone, and my blood ran cold. There she was, Karen, fumbling with a set of keys, trying to unlock my front door. My heart pounded in my chest. This was no casual visit. This was a blatant act of intrusion, and a criminal act. I muttered a hasty apology to my team, explaining that I had a minor emergency and would be back in a few minutes. I shot out of my chair and raced downstairs, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Throwing open the front door, I found Karen standing there, her face a mask of determined purpose. She looked like she belonged there, like she had every right to be there, and like I was unwelcome, as if she were the rightful owner. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. She met my gaze with an unsettling calmness. "I'm moving in," she declared, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Or had she finally lost her mind? The explanation that followed defied all logic and reason. According to Karen, the house was meant for her. She claimed that it used to belong to her cousin's friend, and that she felt a spiritual connection to the property. Apparently, I was nothing more than a placeholder owner, a temporary occupant until the house called her back. She rambled on about the energy of the house resonating with her soul and how she had a divine right to live there. The whole thing sounded like something out of a deranged New Age self-help book. I stared at her in utter disbelief, my mind struggling to process the sheer audacity of her words. This was beyond bizarre. It was certifiable. This was after several months of trying to stay calm and reasonable. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. "Karen," I said, my voice strained, "you need to leave my property, now, before I call the police." Her eyes narrowed, and a defiant glint appeared in them. "You can't call the police on me," she retorted. "This is my home." Before I could respond, she reached into her oversized handbag and pulled out her phone. My eyes widened in disbelief as she dialed 911. I felt like I was in a surreal nightmare, watching helplessly as this deranged woman spun a web of lies to the emergency dispatcher. "I'm being illegally occupied," she wailed into the phone, her voice dripping with faux distress. "There's a squatter in my home. He's refusing to leave. I demand that you send officers immediately to remove him from my property." She glanced at me with a triumphant smirk, as if she had just played the ultimate trump card. My hands clenched into fists. How could someone be so brazen, so delusional? I knew that I had all the legal documents to prove ownership, but the thought of having to deal with the police, of having my private life dragged into this ridiculous situation, filled me with dread. I looked to the side and sighed. This isn't how I planned my new life. Within 10 minutes, 2 squad cars screeched to a halt in front of my house, shattering the peaceful ambiance of the neighborhood. Karen, sensing her moment to shine, launched into a full-blown performance. She wiped away imaginary tears, pointed dramatically at the flower beds I had meticulously planted, and sobbed about how she planted those herself. She claimed to have mail with this address on it, receipts from local stores, even a personalized welcome mat. The officers, looking understandably bewildered, approached me with a mixture of suspicion and concern. One of them, a young officer, with a weary expression, pulled me aside and asked for my identification. I calmly presented my driver's license, the deed to the house, utility bills, and even the security footage showing Karen repeatedly trespassing on my property. The officer examined the documents carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. He then turned to Karen and requested proof of her ownership. This is where things went from absurd to utterly insane. Instead of a deed, mortgage statement, or any other legitimate form of documentation, Karen produced a printed-out horoscope. Yes, you read that right. A horoscope. She claimed it was a cosmic blueprint, proving her connection to the house. Next, she presented an expired library card with a completely different address. And finally, as the piece de resistance, she pulled out a framed photograph of a completely different house, claiming it was her childhood home and bore a striking resemblance to my property. I was trying desperately not to laugh, but the sheer ridiculousness of the situation was almost unbearable. Karen, oblivious to the officer's growing skepticism, launched into another tirade, ranting about how the spirit of the house had rejected me and how I was squatting in a sacred dwelling. She spoke of ley lines, energy fields, and the mystical significance of the address. It was clear to everyone present that she was completely detached from reality. Then, things took an even more bizarre turn. One of the officers, perhaps out of sheer morbid curiosity, decided to investigate the back of the house. He rounded the corner, and then his eyes seemed to widen. He gestured to the other officer, who followed him with a look of confusion. Then, the second officer's jaw dropped. Halfway up my driveway, concealed behind a row of bushes, was Karen's U-Haul. It was partially unloaded, and boxes were scattered haphazardly around. The labels on the boxes were the stuff of comedic genius: master bedroom, Karen's linens, and, I swear to God, one marked manifestation tools. Apparently, Karen had come prepared not just to claim the house, but to move in. The manifestation tools box contained a salt lamp, a yoga mat, a collection of crystals, and an incense rack. It appeared that Karen intended to exercise me with aromatherapy and positive affirmations. That's when the officers finally realized the full extent of her delusion. She wasn't just making fantastical claims. She was actively attempting to take possession of my property. While the officers were sorting through the circus of lies, my neighbor, Mr. Daniels, shuffled over, drawn by the commotion. He's a kind, elderly man who's lived on the street for over 20 years. He squinted at Karen with a look of bewildered amusement. "That lady doesn't even live in this zip code," he declared. "I saw her 3 hours ago arguing with a squirrel in the park." That seemed to seal it. The officers finally radioed in for backup. Karen, realizing that her elaborate charade was crumbling around her, panicked. In a desperate attempt to escape, she took off running, barefoot, with a crystal in one hand and a random spatula in the other, into the woods behind my yard. As she fled, she screamed about being targeted by negative energy and how she won't be silenced by masculine homeowners. It took 2 officers and a park ranger to track her down by the creek, where she was found muttering about ley lines and property vibrations. They gently, but firmly, handcuffed her and led her back to the squad car. The U-Haul incident was enough for the police to arrest her for trespassing and for making a false police report. 2 hours later, her husband arrived to pick up the U-Haul. He didn't say a word to me. He just muttered, "Not again," under his breath, and backed the truck out of my driveway like it was a hostage negotiation. As the squad car pulled away and he drove away, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and disbelief. It was over. For now. But the memory of Karen, the spiritual homeowner, would forever be etched in my mind as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked entitlement and the sheer unpredictability of human behavior. And next time, I will be sure to get those security cameras.